Many of us are familiar with Jimmy Burke's crew pulling off one of the greatest heists, which took place on December 11, 1978, at the Lufthansa cargo terminal at Kennedy Airport in Queens, New York. They got away with about $5.8 million in cash and jewelry. A decade prior to the heist, a member of the Burke crew was killed. Paul Katz was a hijacker associated to the Lucchese family through Jimmy Burke. Besides hijacking, Katz owned a warehouse in Richmond Hill, Queens, that Burke and Vinny Asaro, who at the time was a Bonanno associate, would store their stolen goods in. On one particular day, the warehouse was raided by the police, and Asaro and others were arrested. Following his arrest, Asaro told his cousin and associate, Gaspare Valenti, that everyone, including Jimmy Burke, believed that Katz was an informant. On December 6, 1969, Katz received a phone call at his house regarding a meeting. The call made him nervous enough that his wife urged him to take one of their children with him. He refused, but told her, "If I'm not home in a couple of hours, call the cops." According to Valenti, on December 6, 1969, Asaro had come up the stairs in a building that his father owned in Queens with a sledgehammer and a shovel and told him, "We have to bury somebody." According to Valenti, Asaro told him that he and Burke killed Katz by strangling him with a dog chain. Valenti said that he helped Asaro and Burke dig the hole where Katz's body was placed. But by the mid-'80s, while Jimmy Burke was in Lewisburg, he sent word to Asaro to move Katz's body. Apparently, Burke received information about a state investigation looking into the disappearance of Katz, as well as the crooked cops that Burke had on his payroll. And the information was on the money because the NYPD was investigating the Katz case. Asaro directed his son Jerry and Valenti to dig up Katz's remains and relocate them to the basement of property that Burke owned in Ozone Park, Queens. 9 years later, in 1978, Valenti was picked by Asaro to be part of the robbery crew that committed the heist at Lufthansa. According to Valenti, Asaro and Burke were parked blocks away from Lufthansa in a crash car, and Asaro volunteered Valenti's house as a safe place to hide the money and jewelry. What's funny is, after the heist, Asaro allegedly told his cousin, "We have to be careful now. Don't spend anything. Don't buy anything major." Not long after, Asaro purchased a 1979 Bill Blass Edition Lincoln Continental, a Formula speedboat, and a new house. The remainder of the money he gambled away at the racetrack. Sal Vitale, the former Bonanno underboss, said that after the Lufthansa heist, his brother-in-law Joe Messino, who at the time was a Bonanno captain and future boss of the family, showed him a briefcase full of jewelry that Vinny Asaro gave him and told him it was from the Lufthansa score. According to Valenti, he and Asaro both received $750,000 as their cut from the heist. Fast forward 30 years, in 2008, Valenti claims that he had such a bad gambling habit that it left him destitute. He was tired of the life and also tired of his cousin being abusive to him. He claims that he was approached by the FBI in 2008 and decided to cooperate and recorded hundreds of hours of conversations. In one conversation, Asaro complained that Jimmy Burke didn't give them their fair cut. "We never got our right money, what we were supposed to get. Jimmy kept everything." What Asaro was speaking about referred to members of the heist crew that were getting killed and Jimmy Burke keeping their cut. As mentioned, Asaro and Valenti did receive their cut of the heist, and any money that Burke may or may not have kept from the murdered heist members, Asaro wasn't entitled to. One of the last conversations Valenti had with his cousin took place on June 17, 2013. When he first started cooperating, naturally Valenti told the FBI the location of where Paul Katz's remains were buried. But the FBI didn't visit the location until 4 years later because they wanted to get as much evidence, tape conversations, as possible. They never once thought of giving the Katz family closure 4 years sooner. As I've stated numerous times, they only care about making cases. Anyway, on June 17, 2013, the FBI sent their evidence response team and began excavating the basement of property owned by the Burke family. Valenti recorded the conversation he had with Asaro on that day. Obviously, there was commotion in the neighborhood, and Asaro questioned Valenti. What happened? Valenti told him, "The feds are all over Liberty Avenue." Asaro asked, "For what?" Valenti responded by, again, Asaro wanted to know why. But Valenti told him that he didn't know. Asaro was either playing stupid or just wisely being careful, but told Valenti, I'll see you later, don't call me. After speaking with Valenti, FBI agents tailed Asaro, who got into the passenger side of a Bonanno associate's car, and they drove past the FBI dig site, made a U-turn, and drove back in the direction they came from. They followed Asaro back to his car and tailed him to Five Towns, which is on the border of Long Island, and where he went to speak to his son. They followed him back to Ozone Park, and by this time he must have been shook up because they watched him drive into a metal pillar under the L on Liberty Avenue. Meanwhile, the evidence response team discovered remains beneath the concrete in the basement of the dig site, which they positively ID'd as Paul Katz. Later that same day, after his conversation with Asaro, Valenti was taken off the street and placed into the Witness Protection Program. On January 16, 2014, an Eastern District grand jury voted to indict Vinny Asaro and others, charging them in a racketeering conspiracy, which included for Asaro murder conspiracy, and accessory after the fact for the Katz murder, as well as the charges of robbery and conspiracy to robbery in regard to the Lufthansa airline heist. On November 12, 2015, following a 3-week trial and more than 2 days of deliberations, a jury acquitted Asaro of all the charges. The government's key witness against Asaro was his cousin Valenti. Let me remind everyone to please like this video, as well as the super thanks icon found beneath the video for anyone who'd like to show appreciation for videos like this. Despite being acquitted, Asaro's trial judge also presided over an earlier trial that he was charged with for violating the Travel Act by using a telephone to order a car to be torched. In early 2012, Asaro was driving in Howard Beach, Queens, when a car cut him off. And for those of you who don't personally know Vinny, he had a hair-trigger temper. So he follows this car that's driven by a guy and was able to get the plate number. The following day, it was detected that the law enforcement database was accessed and that plate number was ran. Once he was in possession with the name and address, he ordered associates, which included John Gotti's grandson, to torch the car, which they did on April 4, 2012. Asaro pled guilty on that case on June 27, 2017. He went for sentencing on December 28, 2017, and his sentencing guidelines were 33 to 41 months. But the judge gave him an upward departure, which permits the court to hand out a harsher sentence than the recommended guidelines. Asaro was sentenced to 96 months, and the judge stated that she was firmly convinced that the government had proven the charged crimes. She was referring to the case he was acquitted on, which, if you think about it, it totally contradicts why we have a judicial system in the first place. He was acquitted of all the charges against him, but given a lengthier sentence in an entirely different case. A little payback by the wonderful government that this country stuck with. Everyone involved in the Lufthansa heist is dead, including Asaro, who passed away in October 2023. The only remaining person that's still alive is his cousin, Gaspare Valenti.